That's here in the school itself is not. It's not in water. These soldiers.
Okay, well, before I call the meeting to order, I thought, if everyone could rise, if they are able, to start the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic. Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Thank you. It is 6:30. We can call the meeting to order. My name is James Mundy. I'm the chair of the South Berwick Zoning Board of Appeals. It's Monday, June 12th, 2023, and we're meeting here tonight to review an appeal of Cabanera LLC regarding property at 406 Main Street, map 31, lot 55A, B1. And that is. And we're gonna skip the first order of business, with the approval of the minutes, pushing that to the next one. So really all we have tonight is the new business, which I just described. So before we start, we usually have members of the public reserve time if they would like time now, so we know who wants to speak and we can kind of manage that process. Is there anyone now, other than the applicants, who would like to speak either for or against, or just neutrally on getting the business that's here tonight? Yes, sir.
I'd like to get a clear understanding of the purpose of this meeting, and I just don't understand that the zoning board of appeals is tasked to do.
Sure. So we're going to get into that a little bit as we start to talk about the appeal, but the role of the board is to review decisions that are made by the code enforcement officer. There are a few other things that we do besides that, but essentially it's a level above the decision maker who reviews that the decisions according to certain criteria were given in the ordinance. And so we basically, what we can review and how we review is defined in the South Berwick ordinance. And you'll hear us deliberate and talk about the standards that we use and what we're looking for, but essentially it's not like a court, but it's a similar function as just listening to the information, deciding based on the ordinance, whether a decision is correct or not. And we also, the role of the public is that, you open it up, you can have input into these decisions. It's an open process, but the way we make decisions is usually just based on the facts that we hear and that are part of the petition, application plus whatever we can do to interpret the ordinance if that's necessary. So, okay. We're all just, we're appointed by the town council to serve for a term. It's a non-compensated kind of public service position of just South Berwick residents.
Okay.
Well, would anyone else like to reserve time to speak with a member of the public? Yes, ma'am.
I guess I just have a question. It's hard to figure out what to speak on, and if you don't know what's the process. Like, I'm all for the Whoopie Shack. I vote for that. I want them to stay in business.
You should have been at the last meeting. Yeah.
So what are you commenting?
That's an excellent question. And basically, we're not gonna be super strict about saying, okay, the reserves a few minutes, and we're not like, it's not a, you know, we don't wanna run more than being really late, but at the same time, there aren't a lot of people here, especially relative to, you know, other types of meetings and other, you know, other types of actions, so. What we'll do is I think we'll just, will become clearer as we go through the meeting, but essentially, we're just reviewing an appeal from a decision made by the code enforcement officer. And we have a lot of folks here tonight that are gonna help set the issue up for us. And you'll get a good explanation of kind of what has happened and then what we're deciding. You'll get to hear both sides of the issue, and then you'll be in kind of the same position as us, where it's like, okay, I've heard both sides, and if you wanna speak, you know, we will allow you to do that, so, so you don't have to think about it now, we just usually ask you now, so we can line people up. But it sounds like there might be a few people who want to speak or state an opinion, after we hear from everyone, so. Is that all? Okay, sounds good, so we have 3 members here, so we do have a quorum. Do any of the members have any reason to believe they should recuse themselves, and they have a conflict of interest regarding this matter based on what we know? So none of us has a conflict of interest, no one needs to recuse themselves, so what we'll do is, start with maybe a short statement from the code enforcement officer, just maybe a short summary, or I'll let you take advice, counsel, if that's,
Up to the chair and up to the board, if you want to hear from first.
I'll put it to the board members too. We have an order that we think, if we hear from the applicant first, and then.
Sure, why don't we list what the order will be right now, so everybody knows what to expect.
Yeah.
And just basically, the board also should determine that it has jurisdiction on this matter.
Oh, okay.
And this is an administrative appeal for the decision of the code enforcement officer, and your Article 6 of the zoning ordinance, I believe the board does have jurisdiction, so just, they'll go in any decision, that's all.
Okay, perfect. So this is an administrative appeal of a decision of the code enforcement officer, and this is being made under 14076. 81. So where the Board of Appeals may, after notice, your appeal to determinations of the planning board or code enforcement officer in the administration of this chapter. So find that we do have jurisdiction to give this appeal tonight. And I think for the order, we need a motion on finding like
That would just go with the decision.
okay.
One thing we also might want to add is make sure that proper notice was given to the applicant. I'm sure the code officer did, but just get that on the record if that's the case. Was mail notice given to the abutters?
So the record reflects that notice was given to abutters. Yes, sir.
Just a point of order, Mr. Chair, the 2 gentlemen here, if they're going to speak, but they don't have names, could they please identify themselves?
Sure.
What role they play, please, sir?
That's a great point. So I'll introduce, this is our attorney. I'll let him introduce himself. He's representing, so it's confusing, but so the board has its own attorney, code enforcement has their attorney, because we're not the same entity here, so there's counsel for each one. So I'll let you.
The town attorney, just to be clear, the town attorney is representing the code enforcement officer. And so that the neutral board has impartial counsel. My name is Jim Katsipakis. I'm from Perkins Thompson and Portland, so I'm here as the board's attorney tonight for this matter.
Great.
And Mr. Chair, board members, my name is Zach Brandwein. I'm the attorney for the code enforcement officer in this matter. Let's see ya.
And for transparency, these 2 gentlemen and their firms are both paid by the town of South Berwick.
That is correct. That's correct. That's right.
Thank you.
Yes, so on the order, so we usually do hear from the applicant first, and then we'll hear from the code enforcement officer, and then public comment afterwards. Okay, and just also for people who want to know kind of the structure is that we we hear from everyone, so we're gonna hear from the person appealing the decision, we're gonna hear from the code enforcement officer. Information, as the code enforcement officer talks about, might raise new issues, which we might let the person appealing have some more time to address. And then there's some point where we close the meeting to the public. That doesn't mean anyone has to leave or stop listening. We're gonna stay live. It just means that we talk amongst ourselves and we don't have any further kind of public comment or questions. So it's kind of the fishbowl aspect. You're gonna be watching us just kind of talk and decide. Most often we make a decision, the same, tonight, you'll hear it on the record. Sometimes we will, take matters under advisement and then issue a written decision, to follow. So I can't guarantee which one of those is gonna happen tonight, but we do try to make decisions as we can, just to provide, people with some sort of answer certainty the same night. That if it's complex, that we need to consider it, then we might do that. But we only really deal amongst ourselves or in the public sphere. We don't talk about these issues, with the code enforcement officer or the applicant or anyone else outside of what you can see here, and then just, between the three of us.
Mr. Chair, point of order, if I may. It may be helpful to have folks, whether they're in the public or, already applicants, identify themselves when they speak, just for the record.
Perfect, yeah, and we are recording, we are on Zoom, so, we'll have folks when they speak, just identify themselves, and that'll make it clear that all of us write the minutes as well. Because we have to go back and figure out who said what when, and that'll clarify it, so.
Don't turn that down or off. It's so hard to hear.
I agree.
I have no problem with that.
Second motion.
Yeah. I'm not gonna make you identify yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. That actually does help a lot. The acoustics are not as good as the police station, which was, very modern. Okay, so I think that just brings us to, it is. Okay, this is the tab. Okay, so we have the application for the variance. It was dated, May 11, 2023, Captain Air LLC, and that's care of Roxanne Coolan and Sam Klingstrom. So are the appellants here?
We are.
And let's see, we have, is the center table for?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so we'll have you right here and then. We are comfortable. We're all seated, so we'll remain seated on the.
Sam Klingstrom, 406 Main Street, also representing Covenant LLC, the owner of 406 Main Street.
And I'm Roxanne Thorne.
Perfect.
Forces Entry.
So, and this is your time, I basically state, we review the material, and have the appeal, this is your time to go through them, state the case and facts.
Yeah, we prepared.
We prepared a written statement and we provided copies if you'd like to follow along as we read and maybe use your 3-minute taking as well.
That would be great, if you,
Is it okay if I pass now?
That's perfect, thank you. Thank you.
I think that was 6. I didn't know that would be this many people.
Yeah.
And we can share, so, I mean, thank you. And just that, procedure wise, the record will be, recording of this proceeding, the documents that were submitted and then, information provided by the code enforcement officer, but also things you submitted tonight. So,
Okay.
So this will become part of your.
Okay, we weren't sure if there was a submission deadline, but since we were gonna read it verbatim, we just figured, make copies for you all.
Perfect, thank you.
Cool. All right, so hi, we're Roxanne and Sam. We're both natives of South Berwick and owners of 406 Main Street. We'd like to give you a timeline, to sort of set the scene surrounding our project at 406 Main Street. I think this would be helpful for everybody. So firstly, we think it's very important to know that the code official, Jennifer McCabe, has never requested or made a legal site visit to inspect our property or inside of our building ever. So we're here today, with that fact. We purchased the property in March of 2021. And in November of 2021, we obtained a demo permit to demolish the existing trailer and rough grade the land. Fast forward to January 2022. I met with the code enforcement officer, Joe Roussel, former code enforcement officer, and asked him what to expect related to the planning board process. He quoted us about 4 weeks for the planning board, and I told him that we hadn't finalized our concept, but we wanted to begin demo and construction of the existing building as soon as possible, since we'd be doing the most of the work ourselves. He stated that all we needed was to obtain a building permit. Fast forward a little bit more, April 25th, 2022, we obtained the building permit. We started demolishing the interior of 406 Main Street during the following months. The permit was issued for construction activities, including demolishing interior walls and ceiling, removing or replacing windows and doors, constructing new partitions, a new roof line, replacing siding and shingles, interior and exterior lighting, plumbing, and HVAC. On August 2nd, fast forward a little bit more, so that was about 4 months later. I went to the town office to drop off the site plan review application to get on the schedule for the August 17th planning board meeting per the ordinance submission schedule requirements. I was told that I couldn't just drop off that type of application and that I had to have a meeting with the town planner before being placed on the board's agenda. This meeting was scheduled for August 10th. So August 10th, Sam and I both went to the town hall to gather any comments that they had made on our application. And during this meeting, the new code enforcement officer, Jennifer McCabe, told us that we were incorrectly issued a building permit and that she was going to revoke it. This comment was only made verbally, and after the meeting, we left the town hall. During the remainder of August, we were confused by her verbal threat, but we still had never received an official stop work order at all. So we continued on with our work, which included many items that don't require a building permit, such as siding. We had seen that you were given pictures of the siding removal in your documents today. Yeah, those were from August, before we had ever received a stop work order. Yeah, these are pictures from our social media account that the CEO has submitted for today's meeting. Not only did this work not require a permit, they were taken before we ever received stop work order. September 1st, the code enforcement officer came to post a stop work order on building at 406 Main Street. We subsequently requested multiple times the legal reason for the revocation, and the stop work order stated that we needed to be, quote, blessed by the planning board before continuing the work. Fast forward a little more, October 7th, still not ever having a site visit. We received a notice in the mail stating we were in violation of the stop work order. Again, the CEO has never made a site visit. On November 1st, 2022, the code enforcement officer, the town planner, and an employee from the DEP had a site visit on our property. We were never asked permission or made aware of this meeting, so we assume that that's the only time she's been on our property. That afternoon, Sam went into the town hall to submit a zoning board of appeals application for the stop work order, and the code enforcement officer told him that they never had any intention of finding us and that the ZBA did not even have enough members to take up our case. So based off of that information, Sam decided to not submit the application. A week later, and after becoming aware that the town was alleging violations on our property to the third-party reviewer that was hired by the planning board, we decided that deciding to withhold our ZBA application was a mistake. So we submitted our ZBA application on November 9th, 2022, and it was denied for being submitted too late. So between November and March, the building sat idle for most of the winter. Fast forward to February. This is when we decided to start talking about insulation. We couldn't find a reference in the ordinance or international building codes that requires a permit for insulating, and in good faith, we engaged the code officer via email. This was an email chain that was conducted between February and March 2023, related to our need to insulate the building of our basement, or the basement of our building, in order to protect our assets from moisture damage. The code officer denied this request without clear explanation, and she references a hole in the back of our building and states that our need to insulate didn't align with her order of construction operations. I want to be clear, we have stopped and had stopped all work requiring a permit that we were not otherwise given explicit permission to proceed with, despite our belief that the permit was improperly revoked. It has been our mode of operation to contact the town prior to performing any work. On April 24th, 2023, we spray foam insulated our basement and replaced fiberglass insulation in our attic. We held short of insulating the newly vaulted ceiling because we knew the framing inspection would be required. Again, acting in good faith while aiming to bring our building back up to code. Around noon on the day that we hired the installation company, code officer, again, without any dialogue or questioning, put another stop work order on the front of our building. After being told a building permit was required for, I should say, installation, we applied for a building permit on April 25th to continue insulating our building, and we received a denial for this permit on May 2nd.
We are here today to request that the board vote to provide us with relief from two decisions that the code official has made with respect to our property. We're asking the board to find that the town wrongly denied our building permit application for installation, and also conclude that the initial revocation of our April 25th, 2022 permit was illegal. To draw these conclusions, we believe that it is necessary to examine the reasons for the denial of the permit. The code official stated that the permit was denied for the following reasons, as shown on page 5 of the building permit application that was returned to us. 1, stop work order placed 8/10/22 pending planning board approval. 2, additional stop work order placed 4/24/23 for insulating without a building permit. 3, framing and rough plumbing inspection come before installation. We would like to respond to each of these reasons with information that we believe will help the board make an informed decision on our case. Reason 1, town code official states that stop work order was placed on August 10th. In fact, stop work order in the letter was placed on our door on September 1st, 2022, which stated that our building permit, which is permit number 22-028, had been revoked, quote, pending planning board approval for conditional use and site plan review. The letter, which is inaccurately dated August 10th, 2022, also states that, quote, the building permit should have been approved only after this project was blessed by the planning board, end quote. After receiving this letter and stop work order, we emailed the code official to acknowledge receipt and request more information related to the ordinance that they alleged we were in violation of, and also a copy of the ordinance or law which gives them the authority to revoke our building permit. It was not until November 9th that we received an email which cited what they believed gave them the authority to revoke our permit. The excerpt sent was from a state training manual for code enforcement officers. This is the email that we included with our current ZBA application. And just going through our application, it's starts on, it's email A. Thing. Yeah, email A. Yeah. It was not until, okay, we sent the initial email in this chain as a courtesy to notify the code official that we had dropped a ZBA application off with another town official. That application was subsequently denied by the town since the 30-day appeal deadline had passed. Please note that the code official in the memo to the ZBA today states that we chose not to appeal the initial stop work order. To say that, we believe to say that is a misrepresentation of the facts, as sort of just explained. Based on the information provided to us by the code official on November 9th, we firmly believe that the code official does not hold the authority to revoke the building permit that was issued to us on April 25th, 2022. Between the date of issuance of the permit and September 1st, same year, we obtained a vested right in this permit, the test of which is outlined in Saul versus Town of York as referenced in the November 9th email from the code official. From April 25th, 2022 until September 1st, 2022, we physically commenced work in a significant and visible manner under the authority of the permit. We demolished drywall, insulation, interior partitions, flooring, wall paneling, fixtures, plumbing, electrical, HVAC, a masonry chimney, exterior siding, and selected structural numbers. We installed structural improvements, subflooring, interior partitions, and made many exterior improvements, including the new siding and an entry door. The commencement of work was undertaken in good faith. We understood that our permit did not constitute an approval to change the use of the building. It was and is to make improvements to the structure and building systems that were at the end of their useful life. We intended to carry the construction through to completion, at which point the building could have been put up for lease to our own entity or another entity, which could complete tenant improvements and get approval from the planning board to operate as whatever they intended to use the building for. That is to say, our improvements were not specific to any particular use. All of this work commenced and was performed pursuant to a validly issued building permit. For these reasons, we have a vested right in this permit and should have never been revoked.
Reason number two, the additional stop work order placed on April 24th, 2023 for insulating without a building permit. Like I had mentioned before, we looked through the town's ordinances as well as the main uniform building and energy code, specifically the international building code as well as the international existing building code, and we cannot find a reference to where a permit is required for insulation. For this reason, it's not appropriate for the code official to have stopped our installation work on April 24th. Further, using that stop work order as a reason to deny a permit for the same work if it had scratcher. And reason number three.
Yes, framing and rough plumbing inspection come before installation. While this may typically be the case, it is not in our situation. Replacing insulation in the attic in a like-in-kind manner does not warrant any modification of framing or to be completed prior to plumbing. The installation scope in the attic was a removal of old and installation of new, like for like, with the only difference being the overall depth of the installation. We essentially removed the old and put more plus some back in to get up to the new codes, which require more installation. In the basement and crawl space, the spray foam was installed over existing concrete foundation walls and dirt crawl space floor. Now, I mentioned it in my emails, but also I want to reiterate that spray foam insulation at a minimum thickness, which I believe by code is 1.5 inches, acts as an air vapor barrier. And its purpose is twofold. And the reason we wanted to perform this insulation work before the, wet months was to prevent that dirt crawl space from continuing to be moist and permeating throughout the building.
Not to mention, we had, in the months that we mentioned where we were doing work, we had spent some time remediating the walls.
Yeah, those
You
existing
name it,
evidence.
suits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in conclusion, we understand that we cannot receive a certificate of use or occupancy without the proper board approvals. We've known this since we talked to Joe Roussel. So long ago. This is a condition of any building permit, and it's explicitly stated on the permit application. We understand this. We hope that you're able to see that we have been treated unfairly by the code official and are asking that you please vote to provide us relief from the initial stop work order received on September 1st, 2022. The one that is dated August 10th. In voting to do so, we ask that you please clarify that every subsequent stop work order, including the most recent, which is dated May 18th, 2023, also be overturned, and that we may resume the work that we were permitted to do so on April 25th, 22, under permit 22-028. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think before we hand it over to the CEO, there might just be clarifying or supplemental questions that you want to ask us. You've lived these facts. I think, don't miss that out. So we want to verify the timeline or something like that. I think we have some follow-up questions.
Yeah, please.
So what was the original building permit for, and what was that was
Yep.
April 25, 2022?
Yep, I copied exactly from it. It's, from the thing that the third one that says April 25th. We obtained a building permit and it said the permit was issued for construction activities, including demolishing interior walls and ceiling, removing or replacing windows and doors, constructing new partitions, a new roof line, replacing siding and shingles, interior and exterior lighting, plumbing, and HVAC.
Okay, I'm looking at that permit.
Yeah, I think
Oh, the actual permit? Yeah, that's,
I think it's included in the town's packet.
It sounds like, because you were just talking about the planning board, with the prior CEO, was there, what was discussed there and what was going to go through the planning board when you were talking about this building in terms of the code enforcement officer?
so it was me that had met with him. I had basically said, we just bought this property, we were sort of looking to to start ourselves without hiring any contractors. Obviously, it was like with peak COVID, so things were crazy. So like our idea was to just get dumpsters at the property and sort of start picking away on our own. I had told him that we had different ideas as to what we wanted to put in front of the planning board, but that we hadn't solidified our business plan at all. And that we just wanted to basically take away the things that we knew we wouldn't need because it was far up, so. And basically create a shell building so that we could come up with our business plan. We had floated a couple different ideas between each other, and he said, yeah, that sounds great, you just need, and he actually said, he predicted that our planning situation would only take 4 weeks, so I figured, well, construction is gonna take way longer than 4 weeks. We might as well start now, do that when we can, we live right down the street, and then we'll have our business plan, our major site plan review application for the planning board ready when we have it ready, and then we'll go through that process. But yeah, we just wanted to shell all the old stuff, all the hair that was there. All the old stuff gone, we wanted new stuff put in.
In the meantime, so, and this may be in here, but when did you submit to the planning board? Was that-
We are actually on the planning board agenda, September 9th or 7th.
I think it was 7.
September 7th, and I went in to submit the document, went in August 2nd, and I was told to be on the schedule for August 17th. I was told that I couldn't just do that we had to have a meeting with the town planner, which actually wasn't an ordinance then, but is now. And so that meeting was scheduled for August 10th, so.
And then I think we made the next submission from that 10th. We came back, I think it was 7 days later.
Yeah, so we formally submitted our application around August 17th, I want to say. 2 weeks before September 7th.
Okay, so around 8/17 formally submitted the planning board, all right. Okay, and that was for what?
For, major site plan review, changing these from a barber shop to a, restaurant.
Okay.
And we're proposing a beer and wine garden.
Okay.
I just want to clarify, okay, so you're saying you scheduled a meeting for August 10th, and then when you showed up, Jen told you that it was being opened. So who's your original meeting supposed to be with?
So we were under the impression that we were supposed to have a meeting with the town planner.
Okay.
Yeah, just the town planner, but it ended up being the town planner, the administrative assistant, and the code enforcement officer.
Okay.
And at that point, 8/10, that mean there was no planning board. You had not formally submitted. a change
Not
to your
then, nope, they told us that during that meeting, they said we had to come back for another meeting, which we ended up going home and doing a lot of due diligence in terms of how the works in ordinance, and we learned that, in fact, the first line that you have to cross is not the town planner or enforcement officer, it's actually only the planning board can find an application to be complete.
Right, I think sometimes they set up like a pre-meeting just so you can.
They do now, they just
So
voted
that's-
to change the ordinance last week,
That's what
but yeah,
I would say that's what the August 10th meeting was, but.
I would say that that's what it was, yeah.
Got it.
And I think it was one of those weird ones where a 3-week gap between planning board meetings or something, so. I think that's why. I want to say we landed on the 7th when we were in front of the planning board of September. But
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't recall.
And then, so the discrepancy between kind of the 8/10 stop work versus the 9. What's the kind of, was it just verbal on the 10th and then there was a written on the later?
Correct.
I guess, to be honest, I wasn't clear. I know the code officer mentioned that we were given a stop work order. I guess that was on the 10th, that was our meeting. The intent of that statement that was made to us. And I think she notes too that when I left the room, she said, do I need to give you a stop work order? I said, no. I mean, why would I say yes? You no. Like, I did say no, yeah, I don't wanna stop a recorder.
That was just a verbal.
Just.
It was a verbal mention of she
Verbal.
planned to revoke our permit.
We thought for sure if there was going to be some like serious action taken, that there would be some
A
sort of
letter.
site visit or a letter or
And
wow.
that's the letter that came September first,
That just, yeah.
but the letter is dated August tenth, we received it.
And then you can see in an email in the packet where I sent an email to her asking to verify the actual, it is in here. I had to clarify the actual date of the stop work order so that we could, appeal it, and she said you can use September first.
So it seems like you've got it by at least September first, assuming there's a
Yeah.
dispute about the timeline.
I would say.
Yeah.
September first was when it was physically on our door. Yeah, I mean, we didn't use that email. Oh, we did. Maybe it was like a second. We have another application in front of you guys too, maybe it was.
You're going to in a second.
That's a good, yeah, wasn't that the planning board now? Are you still, is it still pending?
They gave us, right, gave us the requirements that they'd like to see before finding our application complete.
Okay,
And we're working on compiling all that information to provide them with a formal application.
okay, so it's still pending and not, because they haven't determined it's complete, and then be kind of scheduled for the next.
Yeah, we're actually prioritizing what we work on today, that it was this
Yes.
meeting, and we have to finish compiling that application for the deadline, which is this Wednesday.
I'm jumping back to something, but is there somewhere that, where the building permit sets out exactly what you were going to do? The original one, the April 2022.
Yes, there's a section on, I think it's.
Oh, just that building, the building permit, April.
Awesome. Yeah, with the application and here's the everything.
Got it, okay, got it. There's the demo interior, new electrical, plumbing, HVAC, and windows and shingles. So.
There's no action.
Go from, yeah, third page into, town's packet.
Okay. Yeah, that's the certificate of occupancy on May 24, was that?
That was related to the demolition of the mobile home.
Okay. And just refresh me on the properties, there's a mobile home and then there was a kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So there's, you familiar with the location, so the white small, it looks like a single wide building right up towards the street. That was the barber shop, that's the building that the building permit that was revoked is related to.
Okay, that's where I got confused, so there was another mobile.
There was a, like a 500 square foot mobile home that was down lower in the lot, less visible from the street.
Okay, got it. My wife got her first haircut there.
Wait, she did, I thought it was only her.
You should see the haircut.
But yeah, so the we did get actually two permits, I mentioned that.
First packet we got.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, for permanent.
And.
The original ones.
Oh.
Somewhere, okay, when you went in with the first ZBA application and they have a ZBA. But what happened all there is that you were told that there was never any intention of finding you. So
Yeah, so I was sort of left the room with an understanding that, okay, this was these stop work orders, I don't know, like, I didn't think they were properly. We definitely obviously were prepared to contest it at that time.
Right.
But I thought in the conversation that I had with the code official that, all right, you don't have an intention of finding us, there's not enough people on the board. Well, I think instead of trying to poke the bear here and keep going, we can just step back here.
Did they give you any other, I mean, without the zoning board existing, was there any other avenue to pull about or?
I guess I wasn't told, no, I wasn't told about another avenue to, since there wasn't enough people on the board, I would just,
We thought we just missed our mark basically, and we continued to just perform work like siding and roofing, like that did not
stuff that didn't require a
require.
permit. I think it was at that same meeting that, the code official clarified that even though we got the stop work order, we still should continue with repair structure that we had already removed, and that was the vaulted ceiling we had.
Yeah.
We demolished some of the structure in order to vault that ceiling, which left it sort of structurally inept, so,
She actually insisted that we,
so
remove
besides,
the structural.
besides work that didn't require a permit, that was a scope that we continued on, and us doing it ourselves, it took us a while to do it, like, we were in and out there. I don't know, maybe 2 days a week, part-time, trying to fix that, and we ended up right before the April insulator came, that was pretty much when we wrapped up finishing those, repairs.
Okay, but the meeting was all verbal, right? There's nothing, no email conversation,
There's no email from the November
November.
1, yeah, no.
Okay. Thanks.
And on what you were saying, I see this letter from March 22, 2023, where it says basically essentially what you can still do
Yeah,
and that.
sorry.
And then they say more information needed. Installation, drywall, so, I mean, this one doesn't, where did the installation come in? I guess that's my question.
So that was a culmination of, I think. If I recall, it was about 4 weeks to get to that point where we got that March 22nd letter. Prior to that, everything in terms of what we were allowed to do was either verbal or at the time we were represented by an attorney, and our attorney had talked to one of the town's attorneys. So yeah, that was a good letter to receive.
So I'm seeing the installation.
And then the installation, there was an email exchange related to that, and I think it's in our packet. And that March 9th strikes me as a date, yeah.
Mark,
Oh, just the
email B,
just the timeline on that, so that I see the. Okay, so that you applied for a new building permit for installation, that was dated.
April 20th, yeah.
Okay, and then that's denied, and that was denied on May 2.
Yeah, and it was, and that was sort of and we believe that the denial of that permit, the reason for the denial, which is listed, or which we received on, or it is listed as being received on August 10th, 2022. Using that as a reason for denial, we believe, reissues that decision, leaves it open for appeal, which is
why we're here.
part of what we're including that in our commentary, if you will.
And in your assessment, is there any factual dispute about whether or not the installation, even if it were permitted, would cover up things to prevent, are you, I know that if you're spraying, you could probably spray right over everything, or is it covering stuff that wasn't within the scope, or that you have to get back into, or was?
No, and that's, part of the benefit of how we have it sprayed down there in the basement is that there's very little, if any, full penetration through the spray foam to the front of the wall framing, so that it creates that good air vapor barrier. Like we said, the framing that was improved in the first level where we vaulted the ceiling remains exposed for the purpose of inspection. We put a LVL in the basement to reinforce the existing floor joists that are in there. That's still exposed for inspection.
There's something about like valley column, is that?
That's still exposed.
Things that would be obvious, there has been a site visit. We also have a letter from a structural engineer who has inspected our building for our own
Yeah, that was,
knowledge, because we aren't structural engineers, so we did due diligence so that it can stand as it is. Even without insulation, just, yeah, make sure we did it right.
I asked a lot of questions other than
No, that's fine.
That's great.
the other members.
I appreciate it.
They're fine, and
Why did you, submit the application for a building permit in April?
of this year.
Yes.
We thought that since we were told that installation requires a permit, and we were trying to separate this previous building permit from a scope of work that we believe was, imperative for, to protect our building, so like I said, air vapor barrier in that basement. We thought submitting a permit for that sole scope of work would prove fruitful, like.
Would help us get
Would
clear
help, yeah.
answers that we were otherwise not particularly getting via email. So that we could have actual answers to appeal, essentially, because if you look at the email exchange on March 9th, it was just very, because I said so-y, for lack of better words.
So you didn't feel as though insulation was covered in the first building permit application?
We did, but I guess we were trying to avoid reaching a situation that was being just, yeah, I don't know how else to explain it, that permit was revoked, we didn't agree with it. I guess, held short of just contesting it in the ZBA with the understanding from not only the verbal conversations we've had with the code official, but also between the town and our attorney, where they indicated the same related to whether they intended to pursue fines related to that. So we didn't want to escalate this. And, it's like, we grew up in this town, we live in this town, like, we're not, like, I'm not trying to pick fights, and we thought that would be a clean cut way to request that the installation scope, which we really want to get done. But it's a simple decision we made without regard to everything else that had transpired from August to.
Because the original building permit application doesn't suggest that you were going to insulate. There's a description of the project at paragraph 6, and it doesn't include insulation that I see. Okay, yeah, and why didn't you appeal in September? Were you told something that?
We were told, well, what was that, November?
Yeah.
What was September?
Sam went to the office to submit the ZBA application, and he was told that basically it was sort of a nonchalant conversation, like the town is not really interested in pursuing this, and there's not even enough members on the ZBA to hear your case. And he walked out, and we agreed almost immediately that that was probably a mistake.
Was that
That was the last, that was
That was November 1st.
November 1st, literally 30 days, or it was either 28 or 30 days from when we received that stop work order on September 1st. We had gone up to meet with our new attorney, and he's like, you need to appeal this. And we literally got home, filled the application, went to the town hall, and that was when that conversation transpired. And I got the overall feeling that the town didn't have any, you know, desire to escalate this, like I said. And that was, I made a bad decision. Now I see this, that I should have just submitted it.
This was also the same day that we learned that the code officer and the planner had trespassed on property to conduct their own business. And so we were in a little bit of a tizzy that day, trying to figure out which battle we were gonna sort of fight. And yeah, the truth is, yeah, think about it, it was a lot. So.
I think it's fair to say that even though this is very complicated, all the dates and stuff, that the primary kind of problem is whether or not you can proceed with doing improvements that aren't for a specific purpose, you know, while you're proceeding in the planning board for something that, you know, would require approval, like a major site plan review. I mean, what, you know, I guess that seems to me, you know, how do you characterize the kind of fundamental issue here?
I think that would be one conversation or argument to be had, but there's also the one related to the 5 months where we have a valid building permit and we're working on the property and spending money based on a decision that the town had made in April of 2020. And then just to find out after making all those investments that they decided, oh, wait, that's not true. What we said was done in error, and we're actually gonna revoke this permit. And then fast forward from April to, or that was September to now, and they're further being, in my opinion, not like, despite, even if in April it was issued by mistake, which I honestly don't think it was, because but that would be related to what the conversation you're talking about. Even if it was issued by mistake, you know, 5 months later, you don't come back, pull the permit, and then continue to pursue us for, you know, I don't know, I made mistakes and I'm gonna come after you harder. That just doesn't make any sense to me.
And I'm not supposed to say last question, because you always think of one more, but, what percentage complete would you guess that you were describing the permit when you received the stop work? Was that, can you say about?
All the demolition.
Yeah.
Excuse me, percentage complete, because we're still not complete right now.
By any means.
So. Respect to the building, I'd say 25 to 30%.
Also, I would just like to point to, like, we got this building permit, whatever idea we had in our head, you don't need to get planning board approval to open a farm stand. And if you want to open a farm stand, you need bathrooms, insulation, roofing, siding.
Plumbing.
So we decided, hey, we're gonna revoke our planning board application and open a farm stand, we've been stopped for this amount of time where we've already dropped money into it. And we can't do anything with it.
Or a similar analogy, say we have a business operating in that building, we have an idea that we want to change it to something. Do I have to shut my business down while I go through planning board? Or like, can I make improvements in the building while I'm operating under this existing use? Because the improvements that we've made are not specifically related to restaurant, which would be the proposed use. And it just doesn't pan out to me as to why that would make sense. To stop someone from creating a
Usable space.
usable rentable space.
Right.
We're talking building improvements as opposed to tenant improvements, which would be related to the use, right?
And especially just reissuing these stop work orders and violations without ever asking to come make a site visit, come see the interior. This is not, nobody wanted to have a conversation with us. They just wanted to send us letters.
I just got a naive question up here. What is meant by vested right? Is that a legal term?
I think it's essentially a legal term about, you know, goes to constitutional rights or, you know, due process of, have you gotten basically so far into something that it can't be taken away again, though it's, you know, is that fair enough?
That generally, that you spent money in reasonable reliance on the permit, that you've done so under a claim of right, that it's presumed to be valid. You thought that it was reasonable to do that work at the time. The law court in that case, it was cited, the solid case came up with a 4-part test, and so that's what gets applied, but that's what the courts apply. And so that's not something that this board has to get into. Vested rights would be an argument raised in court. The issue here is, did the code enforcement officer err in what was done? And that's, if folks want to, did they acquire other legal rights in that permit, that's something that would have to raise to a superior court.
And that's just,
I just need clarification.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And I think the fact that this, in her citation on November 9th of her authority to revoke our permit, that case, and that meant the mention of that case, and it's in here, if you don't, I don't know how to find it, because that was used as a,
Email A.
yeah, email A, page 4 of our packet. I did the highlight on this email.
This is her reasoning as to why she couldn't go for permit.
Right. I just want to read. Revocation of permit situations may arise in which a property owner has obtained approval from the code enforcement officer before doing work, but the CEO subsequently believes that he or she should revoke the approval. Generally, the CEO may not revoke his or her approval on the ground that the property owner is violating certain conditions of the approval without a court order, unless the ordinance specifically grants that power to the CEO and also provides a right to appeal the decision to revoke the local appeals board. Some case law cited. However, even where an ordinance does not expressly authorize revocation, a code enforcement officer may revoke a permit after notice and hearing without a court order upon discovering that either was issued by mistake or without authority, or that the applicant made false statements on the application that were material to the decision to issue the permit, provided the permit holder has not acquired a vested right in the permit. And that's this being her basis of authority to revoke our permit, find it very important that the whole statement be considered when making that decision. And that is why we are highlighted that statement, because we believe we have obtained that vested right in that test, which we speak of in the document today, reason 1, we sort of lay out that test, which is shown in that case law and how we meet each of those criteria.
and this sort of goes back to the gentleman asked the question, you know, what do we do and what's the purpose of this hearing? And one thing to keep in mind is, you know, that there are, you know, like our council has advised that, you know, there are things that we look at and there's things, you know, and one of the things we don't look at necessarily is equitable or other constitutional arguments, because that's, we have kind of a defined role of, you know, was it clearly erroneous under the ordinance, and the constitutional rights and equal rights kind of say do it, does it violate something fundamental that means that we should go against it. So our role, I don't think, is mechanical in that sense, is limited in scope to certain factors, and then they say, okay, well, once you get all the right to say no to you, then you go to the people who have authority to say yes. And so in that sense, you know, but I think what we just heard from our council as well, and now I'm gonna ask you to use Nara, because over to the town code enforcement officer and council, you know, they listen to you. Everyone's not gonna agree on all the facts, but we basically ask you to listen, and then you'll have an opportunity to, you know, if there's information that's new that you feel that it's important to address, we're gonna reserve some time for rebuttal. But what we just want to hear and concentrate on the fullest kind of explanation from the town side, what they would have, you know, in their position, and then we'll go back. So,
Can I make one more statement? Yeah, I understand that concept there. So to that point, then your decision would be, you know, whether it would be based on the town ordinances most primarily, and whether the town ordinances give the code official the authority to.
I'm not in my head, but I should say yes, because it's all recorded, so, but that's my understanding, yeah.
Thank you.
Sure, board, as I stated earlier, my name is Zach Bramline, I'm counsel for the code enforcement officer in the town in this matter. You're gonna hear from Jenny in just a minute, it's gonna sort of give you a timeline from her perspective. I just want to highlight just a few quick issues for you. Obviously, we are all bound by the rules, the ordinance, and state law to some degree. Those rules define the scope of what you can consider tonight. I think that's really important because we've heard a lot of argument about the code enforcement officer's revocation of permit in late summer, fall of last year. That issue is not before the board. It cannot be before the board. The time to repeal that issue passed at least the end of October of last year. Regardless of the discussions in the beginning of November of last year, we're now 8 months later. There is a procedure the applicants could have followed had they wished to challenge the code enforcement officer's revocation of their permit. They did not do that. That can't be raised now. Citing the revoked permit in the denial of the installation permit doesn't sort of magically bring it back to life. That issue is just not before you as a board. It's not for consideration perspective.
Okay, yeah. Is there an issue of the legal sufficiency of the notice when it relates to enforcement, or is revocation different from like a notice violation? I'm thinking about remodel. You know, do they have to hold, you know, that there's an appeal period, there's, you know, does it have to meet any sort of factors, or is it?
Yeah, that's in the NOV from September 30th of last year. And so notice provided, revocation permit occurred. Again, we're 8 months later. That issue is just not, you can't appeal it at this stage and raise it for the board at this point. It's in all of it, but regardless, sort of the time for appeals, there's a 30-day window to appeal to the ZBA from a decision of the code enforcement officer. Again, that was at least sometime in October at the latest. Also, the issue of vested rights is just not before the board. That's not an issue that respectfully you can consider. You're not empowered to do under the town ordinances or any of the law issue. It's I think a really actually very confined and simple matter. What's probably before the board tonight is the code enforcement officer's denial of the permit to do the installation. And, you know, look, under code section 140-70, that requires that before a building permit be issued by the CEO, all other necessary approvals be obtained. That includes site plan approval. It's just, we're all bound by the rules. There's something here that has to happen under the ordinance. Plan approval will be obtained from the planning board. That hasn't happened yet. As you heard, it's still pending. And so the installation permit application was properly denied for that reason. That's it. That's the universe of the issue properly before the board tonight. And now you're just going to hear from the code enforcement officer. I'm happy to answer any questions now or at the end.
If I could just, there are 3 separate matters really that might have been raised or maybe part of the appeal, and it might be helpful for the board to know what exactly it is, because there's a stop work order, which is an appealable event. There's a building permit denial, which is an appealable event, and there's also a notice of violation, which can be appealed. What are all 3 being appealed tonight, just so that we know?
I mean, we submitted this application and it was accepted. That's why we're here today. So we were of the understanding.
From the statement, I think what
Yes.
Helen stated was the revocation of building permit 4/25/22, the stop work order that was either, let's call it August 10 or September 1, and the denial of the installation permit. But I think there was another stop, there was an April 24, 2023 stop work order, but I think that related to the installation.
And then there's a May 22 notice of violation that relates to that, and so I was just curious if that also was being appealed.
We have, the May 8th, we received another stop work order, on May 18th, again, for work that does not require a permit. The town alleged that we, were cutting and sheathing on our wall. We submitted that application. I am not aware that it is up for discussion today. I made a suggestion that it should be, but I never got a response.
I'm sorry, it's
if that's not up for discussion, this appeal was submitted prior to that NOV.
However, the town's packet does include that stop work order. I'm not sure why.
Okay, so it seems like the later stop work order is gonna apply to something else. That, whether we're looking at, you know, the stop, you know, is the installation is the question really. Whether it's denied the permit or because they told you to stop the installation, then you applied for the permit, and they denied the permit, so it's all kind of,
But I guess
that's the installation question.
like, the stop work order that we got the day that we were insulating references the stop work order. The reason for the stop work order the day we were insulating was because of a previous stop work order. I don't understand how we can't rehash that, because otherwise we're in a little bit of a cyclone.
I'll kick it back. We've heard the arguments, but I think we'll give the town a chance to address that and then. That's-
I'll look the code enforcement officer to give you an overview here. I will say, I think council's right, there are three appealable issues here. Our understanding was the denial of permit, the application for the permit to do the installation work was the primary issue. I want to point out that other than those three appealable events that your council mentioned, everything else, the appeal deadlines have expired and they're not properly moved forward. And the subsequent NOV issued May 18th was issued after this application was submitted, so that is also not, that has been appealed separately, but it's not forward back. Or the code enforcement officer talk now, Susan.
I'm gonna just make sure if that's okay, Mr. Chair. So make sure that you guys have it in front of you. I actually have a copy for them.
We have it, let's see, good.
You should have four, right?
Okay, yeah.
This is the same contact that you'll be on phone.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Mr. Chair, am I just screen share?
Oh, yes, of course, yes. Did you ask me?
Yes, I did.
Okay,
If I could screen share.
do. And we'll accept the paper copy and as a, you know, as part of the record.
Sure,
It's
yeah.
been provided to you.
So, I have supplied you guys with this packet. It's color tabbed. You're gonna see why it's color tabbed on, I think it's the third slide. It will kind of walk through the timeline for the town for you, and kind of spell it out. There's stuff on the slide, but I'm gonna other things too. I just wanted to give the board that feedback. Okay. That heads on what you say. All right. So August 10th, 2022, there was a pre-submittal meeting, for the request of the town planner. Town code enforcement officer, the town planner, and the administrative assistant. Actually, the administrative assistant at the time sent out the invites for it. To my knowledge, the applicants knew that it was gonna be all three. That's what our administrative assistant told us. I wasn't present for that conversation, so if they weren't in the know, I don't know. But enforcement officer put a stop work order on the building permit during that meeting. The letter that you see in front of you, and it's gonna be tabbed in just a second, I'm gonna bring you right to it, was indeed sent out on the same day. It was not sent certified mail, and the September 1st letter was also not sent certified mail. I just wanna put that on the record. So it's easy to say that it wasn't received because we don't have a record of it being received in the town, but it was sent by our administrative assistant. The two photos here show the status of the building on August 15th. That is important, for you guys to take a look at these two photos and keep them kind of in your mind. So if you follow along this slide here, it kind of goes through. So if you follow this slide here, so on April 25th, 2022, actually April 7th, 2022, a building permit was applied for through the code enforcement office. There was notes made on that building permit, and if you look on the yellow tab, the first yellow tab in the packet I supplied you, you're gonna see that building permit. If you look on their application, which is on page 2 right after that tab, If you read the note at the top, it says 4.7, need floor plan and dimensions, 11 by 17 renovation was existing and proposed. There were never floor plans in the file. I don't know if they were ever submitted, but there was never documentation of any kind of floor plan submitted. And then the code officer went ahead and issued this permit to move forward. Well, the permit that was issued is not signed by the code enforcement officer. It is not his handwriting. It's actually the administrative assistant handwriting. But in the planning, in the actual building permit packet, you do see that Joe Roussel, this building permit was issued on the 25th of April, and Joe Roussel approved this building permit on the 26th of April, a day later, and signed his name there. So, sorry, slow down.
Are we missing page 3 or?
Page 12,
On the building permit?
you shouldn't be. Page 3 either. This is, so whatever you have in front of you is exactly in your packet. I mean, it's exactly in the building file.
Okay.
It's got the numbers.
Yeah.
The handwritten note on the top where it's, is eventually E permit,
That's planning board permit.
okay.
Yep. So he didn't sign the permit, was never signed. This is the building permit. I'm hoping he signed the one that they had in their window, but this one is not signed. He did sign, again, this was issued on the 25th. He approved this building permit on the 26th, not the 25th, and then signed the name to it.
Which sheet was outside sheet?
I'm sorry, what?
Which? Okay, thank you.
Hmm? Now, the applicants did state on their permit, this was a commercial use. Our code enforcement officer at the time wasn't sure the use of the property, and I think that was stated here tonight, that they kind of, you know, bought the property, they were trying to get started, whatnot. He was under the impression, for a little while, that this would be a residential use, but it's clearly stated on the building permits commercial use, so I just want to say that. And then, so fast forward, now I've taken over code, he retired at the end of July, and then 8/10/2022, if you go to the red tab, there was a letter issued for the stop work order, and the stop work order was placed on that building permit number 22028 to seek planning board approval, chapter 140/77, major site plan review, conditional use in the B1 shoreland zone and potentially the RP zone, okay? So that letter stays in there. If you look at the red tab right here, it gives the reason why the stop work order was placed. It gives failure to comply with the order, with the state in there, and it also gives them the right to your board here. All right, so fast forward. 9/30/2022, on a green tab now in your packet. An additional notice of violation was given. A stop work order was issued as well for continuance of work after the stop work order was placed. So again, it spells out right here, the building code, 2015 building code, chapter 1, section 144, stop work order. A 114.3 unlawful continuance. Any person shall continue any work giving, it's all there, everything stated in there, okay? So moving forward, that's September 30th. Now we're moving forward to March 22nd, 2023. A letter was written to Ms. Pullen and Mr. Blankstrom outlining work able to be conducted without a building permit. So they have had their building permit revoked. They've had a few stop work orders put on their building permit at this point. They continue to do work without town approval. And then they were written this letter, and it spells out exactly what they can do without a building permit. And please note that insulation is not on there.
But was it the town's position at the time that they could do anything that was not, that for which a building permit would not be required under the ordinance? Or-
Yeah, that's correct. So anybody that has, any kind of you know, you own it in our town. If a building permit's not required, then you can do that scope of work. So you can replace shingles, you can, without, replacing the decking or the sheathing on the roof, you can put up a 6-foot fence. There's several different things you can do. Electrical services, that's a state permit that has nothing to do with the town code enforcement officer, so we can speak on that as long as they got their state electrical, permit, because it is a commercial building. HVAC, we also don't oversee that in this town, so working on that as well. If you look back to your first tab in yellow, you're gonna see that insulation is indeed an acceptable standard for a building permit, and that is captured by the town adopting the International Energy Code 2015. So it is inspectable. You do need a building permit to insulate. Okay, moving forward. So, April 24th, another notice of violation and another stop work order placed for insulation being sprayed in an existing dwelling without an active building permit. The applicant also failed to obtain a framing inspection before the start of insulating the building. Their framing, letter that they received was not approved by the town. To have a third-party inspector go in and inspect any kind of, building permit, they first have to obtain approval from the town to be able to do so, and that was never done. And then on April 25th, 2023, if you look at the second red tab in your little packet here, you will see the building permit that was denied. If you look on page 5, it'll tell you exactly what's denied. Stop work order placed, pending planning board approval, additional stop work order placed 4/24/23 for insulating without a building permit, framing and roughing inspection before installation. Most of the time when the code officer goes to a building, whether it's commercial or residential, kind of the layout of those inspections is foundation, footage, footings, foundation, drainage. That didn't apply here. Then we would go to framing. They skip that step. And then, it would go to any kind of, rough plumbing, but they would need a plumbing permit to do so. They, to my knowledge, they've never applied for one. And then they would go on to insulate. After insulation, that's when the applicants would go on to final. And when they were done with their, entire build, whether residential or commercial, that is when they would obtain a certificate of occupancy for that building permit. So, moving forward, if you look at 4/25/23, there's no document in here other than the first yellow tab. You're gonna see that on 4/25/23, their building permit 22/28 expired. Building permits are good for 1 year. They can be extended with substantial start. If that substantial start was proved not to be in violation of a stop work order, I called, my boss at the state called the MERS on this. And, there's no reason to extend this permit, and it's never been applied for now, to extend it, and now we're in June, so. On 5/2/2023, the code enforcement officer denied the after the fact building permit, because it was, submitted after the fact because they had already insulated, because of the applicant has not received planning board approval. The whole thing here is the applicant is welcome to insulate their building with a active building permit after the planning board has given them approval or blessed their project. So if you look, it's actually the last green tab in your, packet, you're gonna see the letter, and you're also gonna see a building permit denial form, and it gives them exactly why the building permit was denied. There's a letter written, everything's inclusive on that. Okay, do you have any questions on this slide before I move on, or should I keep going?
So where were they at with the framing? Was it complete and was it
It is up to the applicants to call for a framing inspection, just to let you know, and that's what every applicant in this town, any town does. They complete a framing inspection and they put in those structural beams, LVLs, whatever they, have put in their building. It was up to them at that time to call for a framing inspection. They never have.
Do you need an active permit to get a framing inspection or?
So the stop work was placed on their, building permit, and what that means is, a stop work order means stop, vacate the building, but make it secure and safe first. Now, taking out all the structural integrity of your building, for one, is not safe for the applicants, but it's also not safe for anyone around. The child is going around or whatever, that building needs to sustain. And so the applicants took out their structural integrity of the building and then replaced it again without any kind of framing inspection from the town to see if the building's even safe at this point.
Well, I was just trying to get a sense of it. It sounds like the insulation, you said the insulation has to follow a framing inspection and that's what's holding the insulation for approval or?
No, they need an active building permit to have it, to be able to conduct installation, like to put in installation, and they don't have an active building permit and they haven't since August 10th.
Okay, so the town's position is that under 14069, insulation requires a building permit. Is that fair?
Well, it's actually 14070 where a building permit is required for how structural changes and is that where you're at?
Yeah, I have it as 69, but permit required for the following activities, alterations, repairs, and additions.
Yeah,
Which
so-
includes structural modifications.
That's exactly what it falls under. And if you look again on this first permit, it is an inspectable checkoff signed by the code enforcement officer for installation.
Okay.
And it is on the original permit and it's checked off with a check mark next to it. So the applicants did indeed know that it was required for an inspection, of the building permit. Do you have any more questions on this slide or should I?
Oh, and we had noted before that the installation wasn't part of the description of the project, but it's checked for framing and installation inspection.
The code enforcement officer did not fill out this permit. This is not his handwriting. And you can tell if you look at page 1 and then you look at the bottom of page 5, he did not, this is not his writing on the permit.
What's the town's?
This is the
Position on
admin
that,
assistant, but it's not signed. I don't know, I didn't work here at that time.
But,
I didn't join the team until June.
but it's not alleging, the town is alleging a forgery or fraud of some kind, it's just.
No, because it's not signed, so that would be forgery or fraud, but they would have been issued a red permit, and my assumption would be that he physically signed that red permit. We can actually zoom into pictures I have to see, but the most important thing is the building application was signed by him the next day. So he did approve this permit.
And so whether or not it meets the formalities, this permit with the framing installation and occupancy inspections checked is kind of the permit that was issued. Can we agree on that?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
Yep.
so would it imply that there would be some sort of framing inspection?
framing installation, yep.
Okay,
Just for clarifications, why did they need to go to the planning board in the first place?
Because when they brought in their site plan review, so let's talk about it. So when they came in to apply for their building permit back in April, which I think is your question, so if I'm going down the wrong path, please just stop me. In most cases, the applicants would have been able to come in front of the code enforcement officer, right, and apply for a building permit for demo. So they demoed the trailer on site, there were issues sealed for that, that's not here, right? I did include it in here just so you could see, we don't have the actual building permit application in office, I'm not sure where it is, but it wasn't in the file or any of the documents we have. So, when they came in front of the code enforcement officer in April, they should have been allowed to demo the interior of this building. Absolutely. I would have issued that permit too. What they should have been issued is the permit for everything else on this permit. Now, at the time, there was no active planning board, application in front of the board. So our previous code enforcement officer wasn't really sure what their use was gonna be. Now, if you look at table A in the ordinance, right? So here it is, and you're in the B1 shoreland, possibly resource protection, but it's not clear if they're in resource protection or not, so I just want to state that, but there are only a few things you can do without planning board approval in that zone. If it's okay, I'm gonna read them for you. So an accessory apartment which doesn't exist because there's no, dwelling on site. There's no single family dwelling on site, so they can't have like a accessory dwelling unit, okay? You can have a dock with a special use permit, doesn't apply here. Minor home occupation, again, doesn't apply to the standard, there's no residential on site. On-premise signs they can have on site. They can sell plants on site, but having a greenhouse on site or selling plants, you don't need, and you don't need insulation, you don't need bathrooms. I mean, everybody's been to local farm stands, they don't have that, right? They have a structure with whatever. Now, are there some farm stands or plant shops that have those things? Of course. But here to sell plants, don't need it. They can have a yard sale on site, or they can, with site plan review, again, be residential, so that's all too. There's very few things that you can do in the shoreland slopes without good site plan through the planning board. So, once they came in,
Commercial setting that we're talking about, as opposed to residential, or is it both?
any, really any, so even residential needs site plan review. So,
Would there be, I mean, are there questions about grandfathering in terms of the structure itself? If it already had a bathroom electrical, could you, yeah, I mean, is that something that you'd be able to keep there even if it doesn't
of course,
need approval, or
yeah,
I'm assuming it lost
so.
the use?
It was used, yeah, but, if there's a bathroom on site and it already had the electrical and it was already like an established drywall or whatever, as long as they didn't take it down, they don't have to bring it up to today's code, they can leave it, they can use it as that use. There's no, there's nothing that says that they would have to demo it and,
And what prompted you to have the August tenth meeting?
I didn't hold the August 10th meeting and ended up on my calendar. Yeah, I'm not sure what led up to the applicants having to have a pre-submittal meeting. I'm not sure. I wasn't present for that. At the time, I was working in 2 different towns and I was actually in the other town, the day that they came in. And I'm not sure that our town planner was in the office when they came in the initial time either, which we have around July 25th. So, I'm not sure on that. All right. So, once they came in and they had a use, right, a grown-up use of the building, then they need planning board approval to have a building permit, an active building permit, and that's why it was revoked. It was revoked just pending planning board review. I checked with, Paul Demers at the state level. Tim's my boss, but Paul's really my boss. I'm certified through the fire marshal's office. I checked to make sure that everything was correct in revoking that permit, and it was, so.
And the most important thing about that, so the time challenge is long for that.
Yeah. So, do you have any more questions on this slide, or any of my timeline here?
Did everything they were working on, did it already exist in some form and they were replacing it and bringing it up, or was it anything, was it a new system, were they new systems they were putting in, like the HVAC and the electrical and plumbing and et cetera?
So there's nothing in the building permit, and I think the applicants would probably have to speak to this after, I'm just not sure. There's nothing besides that little note on the top of the building permit requesting more documentation for floor plan and dimension. It's not part of anything that's in their code file upstairs or any kind of planning file we looked. So I'm not really sure what the layout of the inside of the building really is gonna look like, other than I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's part of their planning board. Honestly, I've never seen what the inside is really gonna look like, so I don't know. I don't know if they demoed everything. I don't know.
Because you don't know that what they were doing under the permit was a replacement of existing systems or an upgrade or new systems entirely.
Well, you can't do replacement systems, so you have to bring it up to today's code. But if you demo, a building, even if you demo your residential house, you still have to apply for a building permit to put everything back.
And I would just say, as to the issues before the board, the question is, what were they doing? There was evidence that they were insulating the building, and that was being done without an active building permit.
Right.
So that's the narrow scope of what the board's actually considering tonight. That's the thing for the board.
So Jen, is it fair to say that anybody down in that zone who wanted to insulate a commercial structure would need to come in and get planning board approval?
No, so it depends on the use. So we have a use chart here, it falls under table A. So anybody that is replacing insulation in their home, whether it's residential or commercial or their business, they have to have a building permit to be able to do so. But if it's allowed, if this is a commercial property, so if they're gonna change the use of that commercial property and they're gonna demo it and rebuild it, then yes, they need an active building permit, and anybody in that zone would too.
If they're not going to change the use, they still require a building permit for insulation.
Yes. Yep. An active building permit is for any installation within our town, residential or commercial. An active building permit needs to take place. Needs to be applied for and permitted before they can do so.
Would any change of use be subject to planning board approval?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And basically, since they lost the grandfather use, is it basically the position that any use is now going to require
That's correct.
review?
Except for a yard sale, those things I told you about, on-premise signs, plant sales, or yard sales. Those are the only three that don't
So
require
if
it.
it's a Y on the chart, then it's okay without it.
Yes, but remember, you need to look in the B1 zone, but also shoreline protection and possibly RP. But if you look down shoreline protection, you're gonna see what I'm doing. And they are in the shoreline, there's shoreline and slope district.
Which one is the short end on the chart? Is it?
Yeah, it's SD.
Okay. And so the more restrictive applies. So
That's correct.
we have seasonal sale of produce and plants from locally, is that?
Yeah. That's plant sales.
And it wouldn't, I mean, I guess. How built up, I mean, I guess the question would be. If you don't need a permit to do that, what kind of structure can you do that from, and how, how do we define what would be an appropriate structure to sell?
So I feel like,
seasonally?
yeah, I feel like this has come up in other Board of Appeals meetings, but agriculture, it falls under agricultural, and that's why they don't need any kind of permit to do so.
Mhm. Is that defined somewhere, or I mean, because, really, if you think about like Riverside Farms, they have seasonal sale of produce plants from locally, but. Or you could just have like a shack, like a wooden shack on the side of the road.
They're
so
not-
it's just.
They're not insulated. Riverside Farms here in Northborough over that line, they're not insulated. They don't have public bathrooms. They don't have those things. Do they have a kitchen there? Yes. But they don't have, We're not talking about plant sales here. We're talking about a planning board application that's, in front of the planning board for a restaurant use,
Is pending, right? I mean,
which
there's
is pending.
evidence about the change of use that can apply to the board.
That's right. Yep.
But it seems like the town's initial approach was just do what you can do. And then apply, it seems like the intent is the permit says, P board to follow, P permit to follow. Joe Roussel's intent was just. All this stuff you can do now is non-specific to a use you need permission for, and then you can go to the planning board. Is that a fair assessment of Joe's approach on that, or?
Probably in April, but once they apply for site plan review for a use, that changes.
What's the trigger for that, I guess, is it when the application is
Middle.
submitted, not complete, or?
It's submitted.
Okay.
Yeah, I have more slides, but I'm just waiting for them to. You guys move on,
Change the slides, right?
if that's okay. So here you see, so in the first slide, you saw that it was August 15th. The door was different. Building looks a little bit different. The insulation truck is covered by this little window. I'll show it to you, see if it moves it. If not, that's an insulation truck, and if you look really close to the picture in front of you, you're gonna see the insulation plumb line back there as well. They were actively insulating when me and Officer Arsenal, no, was it Arsenal? Yeah, maybe, he showed up on site, to put a stop work order on the building. The, visitors came in front, we had a conversation about them insulating, what they were insulating, it was the scope of the work. He had worked with him that was in like front of the building, we spoke to him for a few minutes. He went and got basement, I don't know if he was you or another worker, we had a conversation, we issued the stop work order on the front of the building, and they were sent a letter certified mail for this, violation.
What was the scope of the work that they described, cheap installation, and where were they?
They didn't really go into detail about just certain areas they were insulating, they told us they were insulating the entire building, so they just said we're here to insulate the building, so. Yep, okay. So that's evidence on 424.
Did you enter the building?
I did not, nope, but the door was open, you could see inside. The worker did come outside, to speak with us right off the sidewalk. There's like a gravel little area there. So moving forward, the town just wants, or the town, you know, recommends, hold on, I have to go back because I accidentally hit a button and I apologize for that. So, sorry, hold on 1 second. This is kind of the chain of events that, you know, almost all of our applicants who are seeking planning board approval follow. So you get planning board, so moving forward, the applicant should seek planning board approval first. Then they should apply for their building permit. And then you can't see it because that's covering what you have it in front of you. It says any state licenses apply for occupancy and a liquor license at that time. So on the next slide, it kind of speaks to some of those things. In summary, the applicant should obtain planning board approval. Applicant should then apply for a building permit. Applicant should begin work with proper inspections and not move forward without them. Applicant should apply for any state licenses or certificates as needed. Applicant will apply for their liquor license and occupancy. Applicant can then open their business if all approvals are granted for all steps. And that is it.
And if I may, again, put a little bit of a lens on this very briefly, I think the questions before the board tonight are, let's assume that all three, although I don't think it was super clear in the presentation, but I think let's assume that all three appealable events are before the board. Stop work order in the NOD issued as a board, the denial of to the installation, the denial was issued May 2nd. As of April 24th, 2023, there was no valid active building permit. Wrong or otherwise, it had been revoked a long time ago, the appeal deadline to challenge that revocation lawsuits expired. No active building permit at the time installation work is done. That triggered the stop work order in the NOV. The enforcement officer correct and issuing the stop work order in the NOV. You have to conclude, yes, because there's no active building permit and the time of challenge response expired. The other issue, the denial of the permit as of May 2nd, again, that denial exists because there's no site plan approval for the change in use as of the time the application was submitted. That's pending. It's a change in use to a restaurant. Site approval is required before building permit issues. Installation work requires a building permit, and so working backwards, you've got that chain of events. And again, the question with that appeal was the code enforcement officer right in denying the building permit? It has to conclude yes, because there's no site plan.
So they just said we're gonna pull back our application, just cancel our application to the planning board. And we wanna be, you know, let's say, sell produce. And can they get a building permit at that point? Under what we're, you know, under that analysis of the proper order of everything?
Yes,
I mean, so that they could, so theoretically, they could pull back their planning board application, do what they want to do, and then reapply to the planning board later for the change of use. Is that theoretically possible?
yes.
But again, those are fair questions, not the issue before the board tonight.
But they wouldn't be able to do certain things like build out a bar for a restaurant, and they wouldn't be able to do things that were any kind of use. The only thing that they would be able to do, sorry.
No.
Okay, the only things that they would be able to do, if they pulled back that planning board application, the only things that they would be able to do is sell plants, which is fine. They could get a building permit for installation and finishes, but nothing of any kind of use. So they couldn't build out an entire bar and then come to the planning board. They couldn't, I don't know, whatever.
What about commercial use?
Residential use at this point, because it has been a commercial use, they would need planning board approval to do that. Those things, again, signs, plants, and yard sales are the only three things that this building could have for in our shoreline zone, potentially RP zone, without planning board approval.
Is there a dispute over whether or not, I mean, is there, I guess, a disagreement on whether or not installation under the interpretation requires a building permit? In that sense that,
There shouldn't be, because we adopted the international building codes, and that is captured under the International Energy Code 2015, which the town follows, and so does the state. So there shouldn't be a question on that, and it's checked off on their building permit under the yellow tab.
does that mean, what's the connection between the building code and the permit requirements? Is that, I mean, I'm assuming the building code says a lot of things about, a lot of things like shingle, things you can do without a permit, theoretically, is that correct, or?
And yeah, that's encapsulated in the March 23rd, 2023 letter.
That's correct.
Of the ordinance that they can do without a building. But if that's sort of work that you can do without a building permit.
So those are listed under this blue tab right here, and you can read them all through, and if you want to read them, I will.
Right, so those things are not addressed in the International Building Code, so there's no specs for those.
So it tells you the fence is feet and under building permit. Something, we have no jurisdiction over that because we are not certified in that area. We are not certified as electrical inspectors in that area.
Okay, so anything is under your mandate,
The building, so that will go under a state permit and not a local permit anyway. Because this is not just, this isn't a residential, this is a commercial building at this time.
yeah, it's just, the language is hard to get from, alterations, repairs, and additions, which include structural modifications. It's hard to get there, like, that's pretty vague in terms of what would be from so no, building the absolute one of the buildings like that is sparking out, I don't.
I understand, but that's why it's captured here on the building permit and all these things, this building permit was pulled up in court.
Well, it's just odd because it says it's building permit, installation is not in the. It's not this, the word described, there's an installation inspection, that so it implies that, don't cover everything up before we inspect it, but then you're gonna insulate it, and then we're gonna inspect it. Is that, do you know why does the building permit reference, why is there an installation inspected, non-installation on the permit activities?
I covered here in April of 2022, I'm not sure
Okay.
why that is, but if you have a framing inspection and you're doing finished work, you're gonna insulate. I mean, that's just you're not gonna they're not gonna, do all this work to the building and not insulate it, they're not gonna do that. And if they're gonna demo it right down to the studs, they're gonna be putting everything back. Electrical to today's code, insulation to today's code, because the insulation to today's code is a lot different than it was when that building probably first existed. Electrical as well.
And do you know if it's part of the demo that they remove insulation from the interior, is that, would this, the insulation we're talking about, would that be a replacement of what was removed, or?
What I saw when I was on site, when they were starting to insulate, everything was down to the studs on the outer walls. The applicant would have to be able to speak to that in the front of the building to be able to see that, and maybe it's different for them, but you'll have to speak to that because we only saw so much of that building. We did not enter the building or go inside. There's a guy that was standing kind of mid down in the building. It's a pretty short building, but he was like midway down and he had like a full hazmat suit on for insulation, so. Yeah.
Well, again, I've asked a lot of questions, so I'm gonna let.
We covered a lot of lines.
Any,
Again, I think the question for you are very limited. It's, did the code enforcement officer properly issue stop work order notice of violation and deny the permit to do the installation? And again, when you look at the requirements and the ordinance and chain of events here, there's no site plan approval as of April 24th. There's a building permit as of April 24th, kind of challenge that expired months ago. And so, the code enforcement officer doesn't have any discretion, is obligated to deny the permit and issue the stop work order, you know.
And like I said, we'll reopen it, but just, and the goal is really just to limit it to new issues or items that you want to rebut, you know, that were raised by what they.
Yeah. This is the first time we've heard that our permit is expired. I know I have some friends who, has permits for a shed and they got the first email prior to their permit expiring to let them know that, to let the code officer know if they've made substantial start on their project, the permit expired, so they could reissue it or close it out. This is the first time we've heard that our permit will expire. It was definitely our understanding that a substantial start we can have. Like I said, we were at 30% complete, not only, I mean, that's substantial and financially it's substantial as well. We haven't done any plumbing in the building. So the installation that we did do on that day didn't conceal any plumbing, it didn't conceal any electrical. As I stated, the new framing that would require inspection has not been sealed either. It would be it's my understanding that the installation inspection is to confirm compliance with energy code, correct? So that installation can still be inspected as in the framing. So perhaps complete all framing before we went ahead and did some installation, but it doesn't preclude us, in my opinion, from doing some installation. With respect to the permits in the IEEC reference, the International Energy Efficiency Code, I don't think there is a section in there called permits. So if you have a reference to that, that'd be good to know.
Did you remove installation, I mean, the part that you,
So we
part of
have-
the issue, what used to be there, what were you?
The attic, so the crawl space had insulation in the floor. That was removed back before this, when we looked at
Yeah,
earlier, August,
I took a picture actually.
July or August.
It was August 3rd.
August 3rd, we removed the crawl space insulation. That's the area that we had concern about moisture because it's a dirt crawl space. They had to put down black plastic as their vapor barrier. Wasn't sufficient or code compliant, and they insulated the floor joist. So we decided to take that insulation out. And what we went back with was spray foam up the walls, over the crawl space, and up the other wall to encapsulate the basement. The attic insulation, which we had our contractor, that insulation, when we vaulted the ceiling, the insulation that was in that portion that we removed, that got removed when we did that work. And the remaining attic insulation got removed by our contractor, took it out, put the new one in. Again, I assume that there was some insulation before, we brought it up to R9, which is the new code. It definitely wasn't the code requirement back in the day. Do we know who made the notes on that building permit at the top of the sheet related to planning board, requiring planning board approval? There's been some comments previously that the code office didn't know that we were intending to eventually change the use of the building, and that sort of proves otherwise. And then I do have a copy of the building permit, the red one that is on our door. It does have a date of 4/25. If you care for a copy, we can provide it, but the date in that copy is 4/25. I think it's a 1 day difference. It makes sense in the course of business. I guess back to our looking for an ordinance that we're actually in violation of, or one that cites authority. The failure to comply statute, in my opinion, doesn't relate to why we would need planning board approval, and that would have been the reason for the revoking of the permit or similarly these stop work orders. So I guess I'm still a little confused as to this one. They referenced 170.
Yeah, I think
Again.
we kind of talked about it a lot, but I don't actually have it, just D where it says, in the event that the proposed building or structure is so constructed or as such usage as to require review of the application by other boards. As determined by our performance regulation file, the code enforcement officer shall defer action on the building permit application and writing refer the applicant to the appropriate authority of board for review, approval or denial, and it should not be, and if you refer it, it's not considered a denial of the permit. And then once the board approves it, then they shall issue the permit with any conditions prescribed by the reviewing authority. Okay. So I think that's kind of what's, about the normal way. I think it's obvious that the town told you one way, that was not the way we're now telling you that things are done, but that is what I think what they're saying now is basically what's in this section D is just that, if what you're proposing would require, review or authority, which, under that land use table, then we refer you to the, I say we, I don't mean us. Refer you to the authority, it's not a denial, it's just, hey, go to the first to come back, and so I think that's kind of what we, no one expressly read as or talked about that provision, but that's the 14070, I think.
Okay, so that brings me to the statements they made related to having to bring a building up to code and have the main subscribes to the International Energy Efficiency Code, which contains minimum requirements for basements, walls, floors, ceilings, attics related to insulation. And I wonder how doing work to bring a building up to a code minimum constitutes any type of change in use. And if we were to use that building for any type of use that would not, seasonal sale of produce, for example, if I have one employee, I need to provide a bathroom. So I need a bathroom if I have a farm stand that has an employee. You can't, that's OSHA. You can't have someone working at a facility that doesn't have a bathroom. So what I'm getting at is, despite the use of that building, it needs those code minimums, including insulation. So.
I'm fixing it, was there, the only thing we haven't talked about is the interior walls, like of the main floor, was that part of the?
No.
What was it, was anything taken out, was it a part of the spray foam? Or was it?
No, the first floor exterior walls, the ones that actually got their drywall removed, we intend to put new openings in there, and we fell short of putting new openings there because of these stop work orders.
Okay, so it was removal and then replacement in the attic, and then the basement, the crawl space, basically damp proofing / insulation of the exterior walls and then the floor.
Yep.
The ground. Right.
And then, it's in our permit application, it shows
Yeah, it's
the
really there.
insulation and the R values that we're looking to do. And I guess the basement sprayed in the attic is 5 glass. Oh, the cathedral ceiling is going to be sprayed, but that, like I said, that hasn't been done. That was where we took the ceiling out to the structural grades. The structure, just to clarify, the letter from the structural engineer wasn't intended to satisfy the inspection requirements. It was just a letter we wanted to provide to you to show that we are doing our due diligence and, we don't have an unsafe building. Again, because we haven't done, in terms of the after the fact permit, we have done some of that work, and I still contend that the installation that we have done wouldn't require a permit, because again, it's not concealing any framing. I don't know where in that energy code it says that a permit is required. Or 140-69 for that matter. I already mentioned seasonal sale of produce and vegetables is a use that we could operate under had our permit not been stopped. We could have continued work, gotten the building, through to a rentable space for someone or ourselves to open a farm stand and start making money on the property. While we went through this planning board process, it still boggles my mind why this planning board and building and rentable space. A number of uses, some of which don't require planning board approval, would be acceptable.
Also, another note is in trying to seek, current coverage for the building, our insurance agent noted that they prefer an insulated building, so that was part of our motive.
I think we've got a good kind of we fleshed out a lot of the issues, so I do want to give some time to the public, but I want to make sure that you had a chance.
No, I think those are the notes I took. I mean, did we go off routes?
Any follow-ups based on that? If there's anything, I don't.
No, thank you.
Public. Any members of the public, you've been all been very patient. Would anyone like to speak based on what we've heard? I could try to keep things about 3 minutes each if anyone wants to speak, but we will open it up.
I'd just like to say that.
Could you say your name, just in address for the record?
I live on the street. I would like to say that, I've been involved with, building design for about 40 years. And I find it, interesting that we have to have 2 lawyers here to try to resolve this. Should be fairly easily resolved and, agreed upon. I'm not saying that, well, and as far as, revoking the permit or pulling the permit back, the original one, I think that there is a vested interest that, could allow them, these guys to keep going along with it. I don't see why it has to be determined by a court that it's a valid vested interest that they have, invested in this property. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. I think we may have some Zoom participants as well. Yes, you have your hand raised on Zoom, so I'm gonna hand it over to you. You just state your name and your address, and if we can try to keep it to just a few minutes, it would be great.
Yep, Tamara Steinhauer, 19 Hill Drive. And we left to come home and get on Zoom, so I might have missed it, but I just have 2 comments. One, if in fact the code enforcement officer didn't go do inspections, how was it known what status the project was? And number 2, from a real outsider looking in, it just seems very adversarial because we have the comprehensive plan going on upstairs and the planning board. So how do we get past this and help businesses grow and help businesses start? So is there any part of this evening that can talk about how they can go forward? Thanks.
Thank you. Before you mute, could you spell your last name so we don't get it wrong?
Yes, last name is Steinhauer, and my first name is T as in Thomas, AMRE.
I had the last name right. That's okay.
Perfect, thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone, I forgot about people on Zoom. Is there anyone else? It's the bridge. Any other members of the public? Okay, so.
I did also want to say that, it sounds like they've moved ahead, Sam and Roxanne have moved ahead, in violation of these, stop work orders and all that. There's been no HVAC work done there. There's been no plumbing work done there. And their interest has been to protect the building through the winter and this rainy season, because the subsurface is all clay. All the runoff runs down and goes into the basement and all that. And, thinking that they have taken, mobile mediation. There's a, the crawl space and then the bigger, space on the wall in the basement that needed to be waterproof so that they wouldn't run into these mold issues. And especially if they're planning on running a restaurant, it had to be double lit so that they wouldn't be violations for having mold, health department. It's all mitigation they've done to ensure that they were, going to be compliant with health.
Thank you, sir, and I think that's the time we basically pretend we put kind of the glass wall down and we can deliberate. And you'll hear us talk, and we also, we're fortunate to have council here, so I'm also, looking forward to doing that input, because usually I have to give people advice, and so getting expert advice from someone is a kind of luxury to have, and I'd like to use that option that I have, so, but.
I think it would have been helpful if all the letters that went out were a little more specific in terms of what the violations were. I mean, this really boils down to the violation of having to do with that table that we were looking at, that you're in the shoreline zone and therefore certain permitting is necessary. And I think there was a lot of sort of beating around the bushes to what the violation was. Now that perhaps would have been helpful to these folks. Now, sometimes ordinances are just crazy and they don't want us to do things. And I'm fully sympathetic to the fact that, protect the building, it would be great to be able to insulate it, and whether they're using it as a restaurant or using it as a farm stand or using it as a warehouse, it seems to be logical that you'd be able to go in and do that to protect your building. But we're fighting against the ordinance. The ordinance tells the code enforcement officer that this is what is necessary to go forward with that work. That permit is needed. I don't think we can say that the CEO erred in making that requirement, silly as it seems to be. There seems to be a clear path as to how they can get over the town's silliness and with this ordinance. And I would hope that the planning board could act quickly on any kind of application that they may have to fully develop this property. Hopefully they will, but again, I think it's hard for me as a member to conclude that the CEO made an error in issuing the denial of the building permit. It seems to me that's what we're talking about here, is the denial of the permit for the installation.
Yeah, I think if we could go back in time, so we could kind of make an interesting issue question, some of the big questions that passed really about, do you really have to defer judgment on this while it goes through the planning board? But that was, I think, you look at did they get invested in the permit? Is the town stopped from saying it's not timely because they said don't appeal this? There's no board of appeals, but even that, those are not arguments for us, and is that a fair assessment? That's the main law is on this.
That's a fair assessment. If someone files an appeal and it's not timely, that's the end of it. There may be some reasons why it wasn't timely. They were away and didn't notice that the neighbors had built a garage or whatever. You're supposed to raise those as soon as those arguments do exist. Go to court, and the court can determine whether there's been a flagrant miscarriage of justice if they weren't allowed to go to the Board of Appeals. That was never done.
What if the town structure doesn't exist? No, there is no zone wide appeals or.
It's certainly an argument that someone would raise to say, I tried to take an appeal there and I couldn't, and court, could you please order the town to appoint a board of appeals and then, and hear this. That didn't happen either. And, you know, that's the way it's structured. You have to file the appeal, be denied, or there's no court to hear it, and then take an appeal to Superior Court to kick it back. That didn't happen. It was unfortunate, but it didn't happen.
And so, but it's not for us essentially to look at vested rights or couple as equitable, you know, issues, but I feel like our decision essentially would be the place to look at these issues, or?
Right, the jurisdiction of the Board of Appeals, hear appeals from the code enforcement officers, administration of the ordinances. And so you look at the ordinance and, you know, was that decision clearly contrary to the ordinance? There may be an equitable argument of vested rights, but that's an equitable argument for folks, black robes to hear and decide. It's not part of this board. It has to be raised here. And it isn't acted on by this board. And really beyond that, what's before this board tonight is really just relating to the application for the building permit this year. The denial of that building, stop work order, the notice of violation, those three events, those three decisions that are all related to the after the fact application for the insulation. Whether the earlier permit was revoked or expired doesn't matter. The time to appeal from that and the actions on that has to be on.
So if we're approaching the installation permit question, is it fair to kind of look at A as a permit required for that activity under the ordinance, and B, you know, if it is, was it properly denied based on the fact that there was a pending application before the planning board change reviews? I think both of those are kind of open questions to me in terms of just, you know, I don't really know how you would decide kind of what alterations, repairs, or additions would require, you know, a permit as opposed to, you know, I mean, it says include structural modifications of the external dimensions or structure or parts thereof, but I'm assuming that's not exhaustive, you know, exclusion of everything else. It's just.
Would you clarify everybody what you're reading from?
Oh, I'm looking at section 140-69, so permit required for the following activities.
Within what zone?
This is generally.
Yeah.
This is the zoning administration that the chair was reading from, section 140-69. Yeah, the Board of Appeals is called upon to interpret the ordinance as it goes through when its decisions are. And so, yes, the basic is a permit required for installation. There is a general requirement that additions, alterations, alteration, repair, and addition does require a permit, a building permit issuance. And then, you know, so your initial determination is, does this require a permit? And then with regard to the application for building permits, there is a deferral where no bodies or a permit is required under section 140-70, even the general application. So those are,
And that was interesting, the 170D that we're looking at, where the proposed building or structure is so constructed or such usage as to require review of the application of authorities or boards. I mean, that's kind of what we kept getting at about. And I understand, like, if you wanted to build out a bar inside, like, you know, where it's, you know, it's like if you have this, why you can't put, you know, a full kitchen in your, you know, in your shed, you know, because it's just that structure implies a use that would need a permit or approval by some other body, and therefore, but so it just seems like it's not well defined what, you know, proposed building or structures, you know, really imply a use, or what is just kind of inherent to having a sound structure at all. That, you know, and to me, it's also relevant, was it there before? You know, because I mean, if there was insulation in there before, and then they got the permit to demo it, they demoed it, removed the insulation, and then say, no, you can't put it back because you need to have a use. It's like, I don't, it seems confusing to me. And on 169, it says, sub 3 says it's required for alterations, repairs, or additions, and then it says the permit is not required for repairs, It's like, so there's repairs in both required and not required. It's like, well, how do you differentiate between what repairs or what's permitted? And little 3 has a reference to structural modifications or, and B just says, repairs, replacement, normal maintenance, conformance with federal state laws. With no physical does not involve any physical modifications or change requiring a permit.
How do you fit into that, the fact that they filed a planning board application? Does that change all that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question, because I think it sounded like the town's position is that, they'd approve it, except the fact that this change in use application is pending for site plan review.
Back to my silliness comment.
Yeah, I'm concerned that, an application to the planning board, it's not even being complete yet, so, and those things can run for years, and so it's like, what do you do in the meantime, essentially, and if you could arrive at the same result by just kind of revoking your application, getting the permit during the work, and then reapplying, then why jump through unnecessary hoops to reach the same result? But I don't know if there's a slippery slope of just, what's the insulation, are you gonna see, then
Right.
is it gonna be, well, now we wanna do this and this and that, and how much can you really do, and what's the actual rule for no apply, so we see it all, yeah. And then we're just kind of making stuff up about, well, what's necessary for integrity. I mean, it's the point, that no one really wins if, we got a planning board application pending for 8 months or 14 months, and the whole thing, the drives all the way through, and the whole thing rots, just, once you pull it, I think it does go to equitable arguments, but once you demo it, you burn the boats, and now you kind of have to keep moving forward. Do we want to break it down that way? Is a permit required, and then if so, does the pending application block the?
I think that's where the town's coming from.
Yeah. Are you both leaning one way or the other on if a permit's required for installation work, or does it? I guess clearly erroneous is the standard, review, and that's, so it's kind of, the time of the runner, basically just how we have to look at it. But
I assume that the CEO was also assuming that there is a pending change of use here. And that's primarily the reason why permit was denied. If we go back to 2022, and the same application comes in and they want to insulate, and they haven't decided what they're going to do, maybe we can ask the CEO, would the permit have been issued at that point, allowing them, if the first thing they did was insulate, would that have been permissible?
well, it sounds like, I'm not disagreeing, but it sounds like the answer is yes, because if something, if there's no pending application with planning board, then you can,
Right.
it's a non-specific way, I guess. But
Once that happens, then looking at, we have to determine whether the CEO made an appropriate.
The board is entitled during deliberation to ask questions of any part. So that's up to
I guess,
you.
again, back to you, Jen, is the fact that they've submitted an application to the planning board with I guess it's a change in use to a restaurant. Did that come into play in your decision to deny that the building permit application for the insulation?
On 4/25/22, when this permit was issued, it should have only been issued for demolition of the interior of the building at that time.
And they couldn't have done anything else?
under the permit they got, it lists everything else. But if it was me and I'm the one sitting here now, what I would have approved is demolition of the building. And that's been proven with another commercial site on, you know, here in town where they were issued a demo permit, but not issued anything further.
Is that because they intended to apply at the time, or, so I was trying to pin down what the trigger was for when you can do something versus nothing, I guess.
It's different for commercial buildings. You know, commercial buildings uses need to go in front of the planning board, so I wouldn't have issued it for anything other than demoing the interior.
Mr. Norton, May, was your question, was the denial as of May 2nd based in part because there was a pending planning board
Is
application?
that what you're asking? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, you were
Okay,
answering a question
sorry.
about the,
I was confused with what he was asking, whether or not I would issue that.
I just want to make sure that that question gets.
All right. What is the actual question?
Right.
The first question was, is the fact that they have a pending application before the planning board complete or not, come into play in your denial?
Yes,
But I think what the ordinance says is that if the proposed building or structure is so constructed or such a use as to require review of the application by other authorities or boards, determined by reference to land use regulation filing, because they could apply for the planning board to run like a circus. You know, they could apply for anything they want. It's just the code seems, the ordinance seems to say, does what they proposed in their building permit require a review of the application by their authorities or boards? So it's kind of certain to say because they've asked the board, then it requires a board approval. And you have to look at what they propose to do and then say, does that, so if they want to build out the circuit, then yes, you know, you have to ask the planning board, but if you just want.
Well, I came in, Jen, a year ago and said, we want to continue a barber shop. And we need to do some renovations on the inside, including insulating the basement. Would that have been permissible?
I'm not sure, and I can't really speak on that, only because I'm not sure if it lost its use as a barber shop. After that, because letters in the file indicate it might have been a real estate office at one time after that, and also an illegal dog kennel. So I'm not really sure if that use would have existed or not, and I didn't do any kind of review on that, so I really don't feel comfortable answering that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess I'm going back to James's question as to what's the trigger? Is the trigger the change of use that they wanted to do here?
Yeah,
Okay. Then the ordinance comes into play. You look at what's permitted in that area, in that zone, and unfortunately, renovate building for any commercial use other than a garden center or a farm stand, or a dock or whatever this would, whatever on that list is not permissible without planning board.
that's correct. And that's my job.
As silly as that may be, it's not that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to tease out the connection between the use and the structure itself, because it's just. Like you said, you could use it as a legal dog kennel without being built out. But, you know, you could, I mean, does insulating a building kind of imply that's gonna be used for a certain purpose? I mean, it had insulation before, and so if the insulation could have remained there, and that was not a violation of anything, then why can't the insulation be replaced without, essentially, it's just you're maintaining the status quo of what was there before, and if what was there before was compliant, then a compliant use. So I mean, it's essentially non-use as a use, you know, are you free to just kind of make your building nice and prevent it from falling over without and then if you start to run a dog kennel out of it, yes, the town would come and say, hey, no, you can't do that, but.
Illegal.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's the issue. Did Jen make a mistake denying the permit? Somebody comes in saying, we have filed an application with the planning board, to make a change of this commercial use. I think her hands are tied as much as she may agree with you and with the feelings that I'm hearing here on the board, that it seems sort of silly that these folks wouldn't be able to insulate a building. Because it's gonna protect it, it's gonna make it more valuable, it's more tax revenue, it looks better, it's not gonna deteriorate. But hands are tied, she doesn't have the authority to back up and say, okay, in this case, we're gonna make an exception.
And just to be clear, there was a planning board application that was pending at the time of the May 2, 2023 decision.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you, the chair, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just caught up on whether it's the act of an application, making an application or kind of the proposed changes. Essentially, kind of once you apply to the planning board, there's something you can't get from the building permit or anything. It seems like reasonable minds to her because they did, you know, Joe Russell seemed to take a position in all these non-specific ways in which it already is kind of there, and then for specific kind of, you know, don't build the you know, the bar and the, you know, until you get the planning board approval. So I don't know if that was just totally out there, but I think under yeah, I guess the position is to defer action on any building permit application when there is a pending planning board application for usage.
And Mr. Cell's prior permit no longer exists and was revoked, so.
Yeah, I think it just takes us back to, you know, the equitable arguments that are kind of outside the scope of what we're doing, because it's just, you know, this is the way it's supposed to work. I mean, you apply, you know, come to the town and say, I want a building permit to build this out. It's, you know, say, well, you should go to the planning board first. You know, I understand, I kind of understand the structure. It's just the thing that makes this different is that the town, you know, the town literally told them the opposite. They already started to get there, and then, you know, so I think that just, again, that's not, you know, we're not always able to address kind of what happened. You know, I mean, I do think, since we're all saying, you know, the next step is a superior court appeal, since, you know, the integrity of the building seems to be threatened by not kind of doing at least minimal changes to place insulation that was approved with what no one disputes was a, you know, permission. I mean, that's kind of troubling and kind of, you know, we're just ramping mistakes of whatever happens next year, whereas, you know, is it the end of the world if they insulate? That's a hard, you know, yeah, we're not, I guess, you know, we can be legal positivists.
I hear
you know,
you,
just-
I don't want,
Yeah.
I don't want to make them go to
Yeah.
an AED appeal either.
Yeah, once we're litigating, yeah, you know, can we strand someone with a partially demolished structure while they engage in a lengthy planning board application plus, you know, a lengthy appeal of, you know, on equitable grounds, or constitutional grounds, the decision is just, it's, but yeah, I think we're kind of in that boat.
Jen, they can roof side it, put doors and windows in it so that it's weather.
Not doors and windows, but they can roof it or side it. The doors and windows already existed anyway, besides that front door that was changed out.
So you're saying they don't have to do doors and windows, or they can't, they couldn't do doors and windows if there weren't any?
If there's no active building permit, they cannot replace doors and windows on site, on the building.
procedurally, I think, what makes sense is a way to get at this. You can make a decision tonight and then, ask you to draft up something and then have that to the following week. Or, you ask me to draft you could give me some direction, a consensus, and I can draft that decision. And again, that can come back, a week, 2 weeks, whatever, and then you could decide, how you want to come up with that. Which is the easiest way, or an easier way for this board to act.
We usually do it at home.
Yeah.
Everything's fresh, it's easier to compile, findings and facts, etc. It seems that we're based on discussions.
Yeah.
We know where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's hard to say that the decision, that A, it requires a permit, and B, that, you have, because the shall defer action on the building permit application. If it's constructed or so, it's required review. I think I can't say that it was clearly erroneous. I just think it's, yeah.
The city administrator appeal, did the CEO make an error? And, we're trying hard to find it. But
Yeah. Yeah, and then go find that the appeal of the other two items, what else were we using? The revocation of the building permit and the stop work order, whether they were August 10th or September 1st is, it seems like, whether they're justified or not, it seems like everyone agreed that they were received. And whether or not the representations by the town, about the appeal or, the substantial kind of start on the permit work, those go kind of equitable or vested rights issues that are within our jurisdiction to address. So then we're left with the build of the installation, denial of the installation permit, not stop work order, which again is just, alteration, repair, and addition. I can't clearly say it was not the permit's not required, going down to 147D, it seems like it says that CEO shall defer action on the building permit application until while it's pending the planning board. So
do we need to act on those 2 points, the revocation of the 422 permit and the stop work order of 810? My understanding is we have to do anything regarding those. We just suggest that it's beyond our jurisdiction to act on it.
That makes sense. But did we define that they're untimely or unsure they were just right? Your determination would be that those permits were not a timely deal. You have no jurisdiction to entertain other arguments, and therefore those aren't part of this.
I move that.
There's a second.
Oh, yeah, I have a second.
okay, so all in favor of determination that the revocation of the building permit issued 4/25/22 and the issuance of the stop work order that was dated August 10th and received, order before 9/1 or not timely appealed, and the arguments are not within our we don't have equitable jurisdiction. The arguments
There's the main jurisdiction.
jurisdiction, right? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Let's do it as a roll call vote, just because we're all going to.
Yeah. So
Jeff, aye.
James, aye.
John Klausner, aye.
And on the third item, the denial of the installation permit, I guess there's kind of 2 items, the denial of the installation permit, the stop work order on the installation work. Would the motion be to find that it was was the code enforcement officer denial of the permit and stop work order very contrary to the ordinance.
I'm talking about the stop work order at all. I thought the appeal was only of the claim and the building.
Well, I guess there was an April 24th, 2023 stop work order for the installation work, and then there was an after the fact permit application for 25-23, and that was 9/5/23, so.
I understand.
Yeah.
Appeal.
Right, and it's not, it might be moved anyways, because it was. I guess if the work didn't require a permit, then if we found that it didn't require a permit, then we could say the stop work order was valid, but yeah, I think you're right, it's not part of it. No.
All right, my move that the code enforcement officer did not err in issue in denying the 4/25/23 building permit application to do the insulation work.
Second.
And we'll vote, so all in favor of finding this as Jeff stated in his motion.
Jeff, aye.
James, I.
John,
Okay, so it's so voted,
And the basis for saying that the code enforcement officer did actions in not error in denying the application to the insulating work would be because one, a permit is required,
Permit is required in that zone.
and also we don't have that has that fact that another permit is required.
Right.
yeah, then
Application before the
Right.
planning board.
under 140-70D,
Right.
they're required for action on the building permit. Well, I guess that's not really. I guess this says you're supposed to defer, and the deferral is not a denial of the permit.
Well,
I think she has to deny because the ordinance requires her to defer judgment until the building permit application for the planning board application is approved.
Right, but if it's such referral should not be considered a denial, if it's not a denial, do we have a final kind of decision that is appealable? I mean, maybe it's incorrect to deny it, and it should have been deferred. I think that makes a difference in being on success maybe, but,
What's the language?
let's go through that. It's 140-70. D, in the event that the proposed building or structure is so constructed or is of such as to require a review of the application by other authorities and boards as determined by reference to the land use regulation file, the code enforcement officer shall defer action on the building permit application. And in writing, refer the applicant to the appropriate authority or board for review, approval, or denial. Such referral shall not be considered denial of building permit application. On received decision of the reviewing authority board in writing, any such decision is an approval. The code enforcement officer shall issue the permit with any conditions prescribed by the reviewing authority. So,
Oh, it seems to me these people could appeal the decision to defer. And what we're finding is, what we're voting on is whether the CEO did make an appropriate determination, whether she's calling it denial or a deferral of the building permit. I don't know that substantively makes a difference.
in either instance, there couldn't be a building permit to go forward on the installation, which is what they were seeking.
Right.
yeah, but maybe it says that. If it's deferred rather than denied, I mean, then it could be withdrawn, or I mean, it seems like the process is kind of tell us everything you want to do. And then we'll grant it as soon as the planning board says, okay, then the fastest. You know, if we're kind of just abandoning the prior approach of the prior CEO and going with the new one, you'd say, you know, we're kind of trying to approaches where they're piecemealing whatever would have been acceptable as a basic upgrade without being specific to a use, but, you know.
So we were struggling with whether the CEO should have deferred or whether the denial was appropriate.
Yeah, I guess, because it says shall refer, so it seems like it's mandatory, and so, if we, and then you have to notify it, right, make it, you know. If we're kind of going by the letter, then technically you're not supposed to deny it, you're supposed to defer it.
Yes, so what that means is these folks,
Yeah, it doesn't
the
help.
issues of deferral,
Yeah,
these folks have to come back to us in another 30 days.
Well, you could say that you affirm the decision not to issue a building permit. But determine that it should have been, the application should have been deferred rather than denied.
that's what.
Yeah, that's why we.
Yeah, right.
All right, so, since you've made those motions, and I now have some instructions, I will draft up a written decision. Get that to you, suggest that you hold a meeting within 7 days, with public notice to all parties, in fact, if you want. Do we know whether this room is available, week from tonight?
So actually, this room is not where we meet. It's usually the third floor, but they're set up for voting. So, your meetings will be held always on the third floor, and it's set up for town council chambers as well. And it is available a week from today.
Okay, so if this board were to continue this matter for adoption of findings, written findings, of fact, and conclusions of law to Wednesday, today is Monday, the 19th at 6:30 p.m. And I will prepare a draft. I will give them to you and through the code enforcement officer, if you can inform the parties, give them a copy as well. It's not going to be up for public debate, but the board can take a look at it. You know, you may determine, I don't know that you need me back here for that. You're just going to be adopting written findings. Does that sound like a process that makes sense? And looking at council for the
No objections, you can code office.
Okay, and for the parties,
That's 7 days.
that's the 7th day. You'll have your decision that evening.
Okay, and with this, I'm just thinking, going with a deferral, it would allow us to go to the planning board and request some sort of condition that they approve our work to insulate.
I presume so, but
Well, we're not your legal counsel.
No,
Well, what it means is certainly, we assume you're going to be continuing to go to the planning board.
Correct.
Your application. And what it means is that you don't have a firm denial of the insulation building permit. At such time as get your planning board approvals, I assume you can come back and the CEO might take action at that time. I'm not putting words in anyone's mouth. We're just thinking that probably the way the process would go, you'd see whether it would be appropriate at that time. It's just not denied. It's still, it's out there pending, awaiting your getting your final planning board approvals.
or some sort of conditional approval by the planning board to insulate.
That might get beyond, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
No response necessary.
let's hope they do that.
Yeah, but let's hope that they just, you get a final approval and.
I'd love to.
Can I just have one clarifying question? If we were to pull at that our planning board application, we could go on and insulate the remainder of the building. Is that what I understood?
I think that's an unfair proposition based on our decision, because it again goes to kind of. What drives what? Is it the fact of the application or is it the content of the content of the proposed changes to the structure? But I think it leaves it open essentially.
It's a back on her.
Yeah, we kind of take it back a little bit. But it'll be clear once we are back here, because we'll have our proposed findings of fact, findings of fact, and the loss of the scope of what we're deciding. It's gonna be clear at that point.
Are we allowed to submit any additional documents before next week, or is that?
It's all set at this point for this appeal, so we've taken in, everything we've got so far will be part of the record of this, and, it'll be available to you. But in the meantime, you know, we're after we adjourn, then it'll be finalized at that time, so. But subject to us, you know, looking at the findings and making tweaks those amongst ourselves as what, if they reflect exactly what we decided. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
To make it formal, then there should be a motion to adjourn this meeting, to this meeting to, Monday.
Right.
Right, 6:30.
So before you make that motion, actually, it's a holiday for the town. I just looked it up on my phone. Can we do it Tuesday, following day?
That's,
You'll do it.
If it's too far,
that'll be the 8th day.
Okay.
Although, in this doesn't get extended to a legal holiday,
I'm sorry.
not your fault.
I mean, we can meet here if the board wishes. The town hall is closed, but we can meet here.
Is it 5 calendar days or?
It's
Seven
seven
days. 7 calendar
I'm
days?
sure it's a calendar.
I mean, I get, maybe it's up to you in terms of how fast we.
I can write really fast. I mean, if we could do a meeting Friday afternoon or something, at a time that people can attend. Friday evening's a bad, I've only been to one, and this meeting on Friday night, I never want to be.
They'll be motivated to move quickly, hey.
Yeah, but if you were to hold a special meeting at does 4:30 on Friday afternoon, 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon?
I believe.
Yeah, I understand, and, 5 o'clock.
No, I'm saying that's good.
So we could do this Thursday evening,
Thursday evening better?
I could do it after 7, Thursday, or before 5. I'm in a meeting from 5 to 7.
Friday, 4:30?
Friday, 4:30 is perfect.
This Friday, yeah.
Yeah.
This, well, yeah, Monday the 12th.
Today is, so we said Friday, 4:30 this week. 4:30 p.m.
I will be in attendance. I'm unable to make Friday, but you guys can summon.
I don't have an objection, I think very close, so.
Do you have to be there? No, we don't have under.
No,
okay.
no one wants to inconvenience anyone or cause anyone.
So it's just up to us 4.
So the board and whomever else from the public will attend or you.
I'm free, excuse me.
Right, so I'll get you a draft decision even sooner.
Okay.
All right, great.
We're not adjourning with this.
We're just continuing to accommodate at 4:30 p.m.
Copy the draft decision. I think she's not gonna be here. Jen, how will you get copies of his draft?
Yeah, if you send them over, I'm gonna send it to you. Email, I'll send it out.
Thank you.
For you.